I am super duper excited to have you here. And not every day one meets a chartered chemical engineer who has written a book, who has done over 100 talks, who has traveled as a true international citizen of the world, and who has even done, I hear, some stand-up.
All very true. Yeah. Where do I start?
Where do you start? Start at the very beginning. Your time. Do you remember Baghdad at all?
Yeah. So
Or is
I
it all
do.
a
Yeah.
haze?
No, I was born in Baghdad in Iraq. We left there when I was about 7 or 8 years old. So I do remember I was very much a child and I remember having power cuts. I remember it was quite hot.
Yes.
Yeah. And I also remember being there during the war. So we were there in the first Gulf War. And sometimes I tell my friends and family stories that seem completely normal to me and they think it's insane. Just
Of
the whole
course. Of course.
you're playing out in the garden and then the air raid sirens go off and your parents say, oh, you have to come inside now. A few bombs go off and then you can go back outside
Yeah.
again. Yeah, it's quite surreal to think about it now.
Yeah. You must feel sometimes listening to the news, it's history repeat. Well, it is history repeating itself. But this is exactly how your book starts as well, with you experiencing those power cuts and that making a lasting impression on you. Because I grew up in Istanbul and I remember we didn't have so many frequent power cuts, but I remember especially my grandparents having a little gas lamp always and like couple of candles. So tell us a little bit about how it was having power cuts and how that shaped you.
I think I'm quite a practical and pragmatic person. So whatever situation I'm in, I just get on with it and think that's normal. When I was a child, I did think that was normal because I didn't know any different. So it's hard to say what it was like. It was just how it was. I do know that when we moved to the UK, I was about 11 by this point. We had excellent energy supplies, never had any power cuts, didn't really ever think about it. So I think those early childhood experiences maybe subconsciously shaped my decisions rather than a conscious thing. And it's only really on reflection that I've made that connection.
So you wanted to be a doctor. You did the medical exam not once, but twice.
Yeah. I
How?
applied for university to study medicine 2 years in a row and didn't get into university. And then I thought, okay, I'll take the hint and go do something else.
And you talk about coming across a flyer that talked about chemical engineering. At the time, were you disappointed? How did you then embrace chemical engineering?
Yes, I think I was disappointed. And that disappointment continued for the beginning of my first part of my career, I would say. I actually thought about going back to study medicine. It took a while to really get into my industry and my role. I have no regrets now.
That's good. So you went into engineering and then you came out of it and you started working at a gas plant.
Yeah, so I did a summer placement at a gas-fired power station. That was with E.ON. And from there, I got onto the graduate scheme with the company. And my first role was in a coal-fired power station. For any power station enthusiasts, it was Ratcliffe-on-Soar in Nottinghamshire.
Okay, how was that? How was it being in a coal power station?
It was not my favorite job that I had on the graduate scheme. Yeah, it was quite traditional, a little bit stuck in its ways, but a really good introduction to the energy sector. And it was a placement for 6 months. So a good start to a career, I would say. And it helped me to choose what to do next. So my next placement.
Or what not to do
Exactly,
next.
yeah, what not to do next. I went for a very small gas-fired power station in central London, and that was a completely different team and dynamic. I think I prefer smaller.
Was that within E.ON as well?
With E.ON as well. Especially as a graduate, you can come in and take more responsibility and feel like you're making a bigger contribution in a smaller place. I worked at E.ON for 7 years, so I finished the graduate scheme, did a couple more roles, and my last role was in district heating. And at that point, I decided I want to leave the company and I want to do something else. And I was thinking about what jobs do I want to have. I actually quit without having another job to go to and took some time out to think and do other things. And what I found was, especially with conversations with recruiters, they were only putting me forward for district heating roles. So that was a bit of a challenge. But I used my network to its maximum potential effect. One of the ideas I had was working in government because I wanted something that gave me an overview of the energy sector. So I reached out to someone who I'd only really met a couple of times, who had been a chief scientific advisor in government. And he was very kind and helpful. And I ended up on a short-term contract in an engineering team looking at energy innovation, and then from there stayed on for around 4 years in government.
That was the turning point. Well, big heart to that person.
John Perkins.
John Perkins. Thank you, John Perkins. You talk about the recruitment gap in one of your interviews. This thing that you've experienced, people having either the recruiters being given the job spec that's very tight. Have you since seen that cycle repeating itself?
I do see it quite a bit. Or I see both sides. So graduates or people earlier on in their career, or maybe even women or sometimes men who've had some time off and want to get back into engineering. They seem to struggle. And then on the other side, you hear organizations saying, we don't have enough engineers, we can't find the right people. And that's the gap that I see. And I think sometimes I feel like the organizations and the companies aren't willing to take a chance or take a risk or take an extra little bit of time to train someone up who has the potential but isn't perfect for the role.
Yes, it's what we get to hear a lot is the talent shortage. But actually, when you decide to turn it on its head and look at the picture differently, it could be actually a totally different story. You could, if you are on either side willing to open up the brief, you can actually find many, many people. So you've always liked writing. You actually even did a little stint as a writer before you even wrote your book.
I did. I was a BBC science journalist.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's the sliding doors moment.
I think it was back in 2014 or 15. There was a scheme run by the British Science Association, and they ran these, they called them media fellowships. So you could apply if you're a scientist or an engineer, you apply to the British Science Association. And if you get a place, they put you with a science media outlet. And the whole idea was to improve science reporting.
Do you think that early exposure to media and communication planted the seeds for writing a book later on?
Potentially. It was, the stuff that I was working on was a lot shorter. And I think I actually prefer taking a longer time, really researching something, talking to different people, and then that challenge of how do you convey those messages? How do you make it interesting? How do you make it human? But it definitely gave me an insight into that world.
So that's the researcher in you. How do you make an extremely complex subject human? What are your tricks in conveying that? Because you say you didn't write the book for technical people. You wrote it for everyday people.
Yeah. I think when you think about it, everything is human because I think as engineers, we quite often forget what the point of the energy industry is. And the whole point is to provide the power and the energy for our society, for the people at the other end. So I think if you just keep that in mind, then it becomes quite easy. And also everyone who works in the industry is a human. They have personalities and lives and interests. So it's just bringing that out as well.
That's great advice. It's been 2 years since your book came out. How has life changed for you since then?
I did lots of really fun speaking things right around the publication of the book. So I spoke at the Hay Festival, Cheltenham, a few other
Wow.
book festivals. So that was really cool. Since I would say it kind of peters out after about a year and life goes back to normal, I am doing a family lecture at the Royal Institution in June. I'm preparing for that at the moment. But yeah, I think life is continuing on with my day job plus speaking events here and there. And I'd love to write another book if I can come up with another idea that I'm as
I was
excited
going
about.
to say the sequel. Is there a sequel that you're thinking about?
There are thoughts, but I haven't narrowed it down to anything yet.
One question that was constantly at the back of my mind is how does she do it? How did you manage to do so many things while having a full-time job? So how was the process of writing the book while having a full-time job, and how did the two kind of help each other and then did not help each other?
When I started writing, I was still in government and it was also lockdown. So that helped a lot for me. So there wasn't really much else going on, which helped. So it gave me something to do, purpose. So I would do my work during the day and then organize my interviews with different people in the evening. I'm very organized. So
I was going to say I've gone through COVID and look at me, I don't have a book.
yeah, I plan ahead quite meticulously. If you see my calendar, it's like everything is scheduled.
Well, that's great because now you work for a German company and Germans famously are, I'm from a German high school myself. So I've experienced that closely, although I can't say like you, it rubbed off on me, the organizational capacity. But do you find that amazing discipline that you have comes handy now in your job and the capacity that you have in your role?
I think being organized definitely does, and also stopping and prioritizing when you have 1,000 things going on at the same time, to just take a step back and go, okay, what's happening here? What actually needs to be done?
So you have a very interesting job uh, currently at RWE. What's a day like for you? Am I right to assume you work from home most of the time?
Probably most of the time, yeah. I am a team lead for a software team, and we have developed an energy management system for batteries. I like to say it's the brain of the battery that takes the
Oh.
information from the traders and then takes that to the battery to tell it what to do. So, for example, if electricity prices are high, then we will say to the battery, okay, discharge now, and vice versa. It's a lot more complicated than that. The
Yeah.
team are incredible. They are software engineers and other types of specialists, and they have been building this for the last couple of years. So we're now at the stage of testing it in real life and hopefully rolling out to other RWE projects. So that's what the job is.
So you're at the leading edge, at the technical frontier of battery tech, but I'm sure there's a lot of other tech involved, AI potentially. I'm speculating. What do you recommend to anyone who is either within the energy sector or outside who would consider following your footsteps? And you have big shoes to fill, and I'm not saying they should go and write a book straight away. But how would someone who is maybe different profile, someone who is straight out of school versus someone who's already working in the energy sector and thinking like you did several years ago, this is not for me, I need a change.
Mhm.
What should they do?
Maybe let me tackle early career first. Something that I have found very useful is volunteering and doing, I'll call them extracurricular activities. So things that are not directly your job. So I have volunteered for the Women's Engineering Society in various formats.
And
Also volunteered with the Institution of Chemical Engineers. So that's my kind of home institution. I've done stuff with the IET, the Institution of Engineering and Technology, Energy Institute, all kinds of different organizations who maybe have a young members forum or something like that that you can join, get involved in. You get to meet people who are in adjacent industries, organize events. It's just building that network and then sparking ideas about career types that maybe you haven't thought about before, and then having those connections to be able to follow that up. So that maybe today, this is my message.
Be generous with your time and volunteer in lots of different places that you feel are interesting and relevant.
Yeah. Yes, be generous, but also selfish in a way, because you're building a network that will give back at some point in the future.
For anyone who's a little bit more mature in their career, what tips would you have there?
Again, similar. So when you talked earlier about people working in the fossil fuel industry wanting to change, one simple thing could be to join like the special interest group of renewables in your particular engineering institution or whatever your profession is. And then you have that on your CV, which shows that you're committed to something else and you get to meet other people from that industry.
I'm going to give you a magic wand and I'm going to say, Yasmin, if you were to change one thing about the energy industry today, and you can pick anything you want, it could be about the perception, it could be a company, it could be about technology. What would you change? What would you use that magic wand for?
Maybe because we've been talking about the recruitment and skills gap, I would make a magical system that matches up people with jobs.
People who don't match 100%.
Yeah.
That's great. I love how you chose to. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
I don't know. That's who knows. Where do you see me in 5 years?
Having published the second book, of course, and on your second press tour.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. I think just following my interests, probably in the energy industry, contributing to the decarbonization efforts, doing lots of talking in like public engagement type activity. So a bit more of what I do now, probably, but maybe at a higher level.
Yeah. Okay. I have a bonus question for you. What is the most common stereotype that you hear people say about engineers, but is totally not true?
I think this is probably quite UK specific, but most people, when they hear engineer, they imagine like a car mechanic or someone doing like a practical job, and they don't really think about the whole breadth of engineering disciplines and all of the different things that engineers work on. And usually when I start explaining, their eyes just open up. So that's quite fun to do.
There are 1,000,001 opportunities and ways that an engineer can go.
For me, I don't know where I will be in 5 years' time, because I think there are so many jobs and technologies and areas that I don't know about.
That's a very good shout. Don't limit yourself when you hear in terms of your imagination, when you hear engineering, or if you've studied engineering, there's so many more avenues you can travel down to than you thought initially possible.
Exactly.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.